Hey everyone, and welcome back to another movie from our hot news channel. We will talk about American celebrities who died today and in the last few days, as well as famous people from other countries in this movie. Please show your love and support by giving this movie a like before we go on. It means a lot to us. Thanks, let's get started. 1. Danielle Scott Houghton. The person in charge of making the new BBC drama series Peaky Blinders and Agatha Christie's Towards Zero has died suddenly in her sleep. She was 30 years old. Kate Phillips, the head of BBC Content, and Lindsay Salt, the head of drama, said that one of our great drama commissioners, Danny Scott Houghton, had died suddenly. People who knew Danny will understand how amazing she was. Very smart and full of joy. Very dedicated and very skilled. She made every room brighter and filled the acting team with good vibes and warm energy that everyone could feel. Scott Houghton became a BBC boss in 2023 and is in charge of EastEnders, Endless Night, and Just Act Normal. She was in charge of making 2 new Peaky Blinders shows. The people she used to work with at Balloon Entertainment said, "We are heartbroken. She was great. Find and help writers, and look out for all cast and crew members. We will love and miss her forever because she was the nicest person ever." Mammoth Screen's Damien Timmer said that every time he talked to Danny, it felt like a rare occasion. Her love was contagious. She was smart, had a lot of charm, and was very kind. She would clean out her diary to help people who were having a hard time. We all tried our best because of her. Caleb Azuma Nelson, an author, said that Danny's death is a huge loss. She was so bright that she could light up a room. She really cared about the work and the people who did it. She stood up for us the most and was a great friend. Kate Oates from BBC Studios said it felt like Christmas when Danny got to EastEnders. She was very good at telling stories and had a kind heart. We will miss her a lot. Andy Friendly, the show's first director, died Sunday at his home in Bel Air. He was the son of the famous CBS newsman Fred Friendly. 74. Pat Crowley, his wife of 39 years, died in September at the age of 91. David T. Friendly, his brother, is a filmmaker who is known for making Little Miss Sunshine. Friendly changed television as a programming boss for CNBC and King World, in addition to being on Entertainment Tonight. As VP of evening programs at CNBC from 1990 to 1995, he created the talk shows that Tom Snyder and Tim Russert would host. David Zaslav, CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, said that Andy was a great director and leader. It was amazing how well he could spot talent, develop ideas, and bring out the best in people. Andy was a kind, funny, and caring leader who was a dear friend. He made everyone feel important. Friendly began his work in the early 1970s at WNBC TV in New York, where he produced Snyder's Late Night Tomorrow Show for NBC. He was born on November 6, 1951. Friendly, Tonight's first producer, was nominated for an Emmy in 1982 for his work in entertainment. He was head of programming at King World Productions from 1995 to 2001. Friendly taught part-time at the USC School of Cinematic Arts and was head of the Hollywood Radio and Television Society. In 2017, he wrote a biography called Willing to Be Lucky: Adventures in Life and Television. Lisa Friendly, Richard Mark, Michael Mark, John Mark, Ruth Friendly, and brother David are among the brothers who have died. Also left behind are grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. Korean star Ahn Sung-ki, who was known as the nation's actor, died in Seoul on January 5. 74. His management business, The Artist Company, said that Sung-ki-on made history in Korean pop culture by devotedly acting. Through his many works, he spoke to people of all ages and brought them comfort. He had a great 60-year career and was in over 100 movies. Born in Daegu, he first acted in a movie when he was 6 years old, called Twilight Train. He was in many big hits over the years, including So Me Do, Radio Star, Mandala, and A Fine Windy Day. In 1980, the Grand Bell Awards, which are Korea's Oscars, named him Best New Actor for that role. The press called his most recent movie, Birth in 2022, the nation's actor. It won a lot of awards and was a big hit in Korea, but he preferred to just be called a film actor. As Korean President Lee Jae-myung put it, Ian has made a big mark on the past of Korean movies and the arts. I miss his soft voice and warm smile already. The funeral for Ian will be held at Seoul St. Mary's Hospital Funeral Hall on Friday. His wife and 2 children will miss him. Béla Tarr, the creative Hungarian director who made dark and unique movies, has died at the age of 70. Bence Flegolf, a filmmaker, told the world about Tarr's death on Tuesday on behalf of his family. The news was revealed by the European Film Academy. Tarr was born in Pag, Hungary, in 1955. His first movie, Family Nest, came out in 1977 and won the Grand Prix at the Mannheim Film Festival, which was the start of his international career. Tarr became famous all over the world in 1988 with the film Damnation, which had its world premiere in Berlin and won the Best Young Film Award at the European Film Awards. He directed 9 full-length movies. His last movie, The Turin Horse, won the Berlin Prize for Best Film from the Jury in 2011. But he's best known for Satan Tango, a 450-minute movie he made in 1994 that was based on a book by Laszlo Krasznahorkai. It quickly became known as one of the most important movies of the 1990s and a key work in the slow cinema trend. In 2019, a 4K update was shown at Berlin. In the past few years, Tarr has taught at some of the best film schools in the world, such as Film Academy BW Ludwigsburg, Le Fresnoy in Lille, and Friesif in Budapest. In 2023, he got a special award from the European Film Academy for his groundbreaking work in film. Tarr's unique vision and unwavering artistic approach have influenced filmmakers all over the world for generations, cementing his place as one of the most important voices in film history. 5. Chef Elle Simone Scott died on January 5. She was the first black woman to be a regular host on PBS's America's Test Kitchen and worked hard to promote diversity in the food business. 99. Chef friend. Carla Hall wrote on social media that she had died. Hall wrote that Chef Elle Simone Scott was a friend, a force, and a leader. She was excellent, kind, and had a deep love for food and society. Elle helped open doors that had been shut for a long time on America's Test Kitchen. She was one of the first black women viewers saw in the Test Kitchen, and she did it with grace, power, and joy. She did more than just check recipes. The way people were shown in food media changed because of her. Her voice was important. Her work was important. She was important. Scott was born in Detroit on November 28, 1976. He went to Eastern Michigan University and the Culinary Institute of New York. She started out as a social worker and then did an internship with Food Network. In 2016, she became a test cook, food stylist, and video creator on America's Test Kitchen. Scott started She Chef in 2013 as a way for women of color working in the food industry to get help and meet other people in the same area. In 2019, she was the host of the show 28 Days of Edna, which was about the famous cook Edna Lewis. Hall wrote that Elle used her fame to teach, fight for, and encourage others. That much strength leaves a mark. Every kitchen you designed will always remember you. Emmy-winning director Tom Caronis has died at the age of 86. He was best known for his work on Seinfeld. He passed away on Monday at his home in Florence, Oregon. Caronis was born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, on September 11, 1939. He graduated from the University of New Mexico in 1961 and got his master's degree in telecommunications from the University of Alabama. He was a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy. In 1975, he went to Hollywood and got a job as a production manager for General Hospital. In 1986, he got his first job as a director on the CBS series My Sister Sam. He became the director and producer of 85 episodes of Seinfeld over the course of 5 seasons, starting in 1990. His work as a producer on the famous 1993 episode of The Contest earned him an Emmy and a DGA award. The Chinese restaurant and the parking garage are 2 of his most famous events. He even had a small role as the director in the pilot. Caronis quit after season 5 because Jerry Seinfeld wanted new writers to join the show. For 56 shows of news radio, he was also in charge. He also worked on Welcome Back Kotter, Caroline in the City, and Ellen. In 2003, Caronis was added to the Alabama Stage and Screen Hall of Fame. And taught making movies at the University of Alabama from 2002 to 2014. Dwayne Douglas Johnson was born in Hayward, California, on May 2, 1972. He grew up in a home where professional wrestling wasn't just a job, it was a way of life. As a member of the first black tag team winners in WWE history, his father, Rocky Johnson, broke new ground as a professional wrestler. His mother, Ada Maivia, was a princess of Samoan wrestling. Great promoter and wrestler Peter Maivia was her father. He helped build the basis for what would become a dynasty. When Dwayne was young, he didn't want to be great. It was something that was built into his DNA. But Dwayne Johnson's childhood was not at all like the picture-perfect family life that would later define him. Things were always changing, money was tight, and there was the kind of volatility that makes a kid grow up too quickly. Following Rocky's wrestling bookings all over the country, the Johnson family moved all the time. Before he graduated from high school, Dwayne went to 13 different schools. He never stayed in one place long enough to make friends for life or have a stable home. Every time you moved, you had to start over as a new kid. Being the outsider in new places where he had to prove himself. It was always stressful to think about money. Even though their place in the wrestling world was unstable, the money they made was often not enough. Sometimes the family had to live in very small, crowded homes and it was hard for them to pay the rent every month. Dwayne later remembered a very sad event that happened to him when he was only 14. His mom was so upset about their money problems and personal problems that she pulled their car over to the side of a Nashville highway and tried to walk into oncoming traffic. He was able to pull her back, which would haunt and shape him for decades. In that moment, he saw how fragile life really is and how even the toughest people can break when things get tough. Dwayne felt something growing inside him because of the instability, hunger, drive, and anger. By the time he was a teenager, he had become rebellious. Running with the wrong groups got him into trouble, he stole things and got into fights. He was arrested more than once before he turned 17. He felt like the road he was on would take him somewhere dark, away from stadiums and lights. He was saved by football though. Because of his size, speed, and natural athleticism, he was great on the field. It gave him discipline, a reason to live, and a way out, which was something he needed very badly. There was no cost for Dwayne to go to the University of Miami and play defensive tackle for the Hurricanes. It was there, with future NFL stars, that he started to understand what it meant to be great. He was good, and sometimes great, but he was always hurt. He wasn't the same player after getting hurt in his shoulder as a rookie. He worked hard to get back on the field, but it was never quite the same. A dream died when the 1995 NFL draft ended without his name being called. He played with the Canadian Football League's Calgary Stampeders for a short time but was let go after only a few months. 23 years later, Dwayne Johnson was back in the small apartment his parents shared with him. He only had $7 on him and felt like he had failed. But it was when Dwayne felt the worst that he made the choice that would change everything. He turned to professional wrestling, which was in his family's business, because he didn't see any other choices. Rocky, his father, started to train him, and it was very hard. This wasn't the kind of gentle advice a loved dad would give. This was a wrestler making another wrestler through hard work, pain, and strict rules. Rocky was tough on his son. He did not have the money to. It was hard to get ahead in wrestling, and being emotional didn't help. Dwayne learned every move, every lesson, and every submit hold until his body knew them naturally. When Dwayne signed with the World Wrestling Federation in 1996, it was still called World Wrestling Entertainment. At first, they wanted to sell him as Rocky Maivia, a tribute to his family tree made up of the ring names of his father and grandpa. At first, he had a clean-cut, happy, baby-faced look that made him seem like a good guy. This was meant to make people like him. Instead, people turned away from him almost right away. They could see through the fake image. During fights, they yelled at him, "Die, Rocky, die," and "Rocky sucks." For someone who had already failed at football, being made fun of in front of thousands of people could have been the last straw. But Dwayne did something I didn't expect. He put his weight on it. He changed roles and became a bad guy, then came back as The Rock. It wasn't just a name change. It was an entirely different situation. The Rock had a lot of charm, was cocky, funny, and exciting. He had catchphrases that people still use today. Can you smell what The Rock is making? It does not matter what you think. Know your role and shut your mouth. He could control a crowd with nothing but a microphone and his eyebrow. The persona was magnetic. A perfect storm of athleticism, timing, and raw charisma that transcended wrestling. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, The Rock was one of the biggest stars in WWE history, headlining WrestleManias, winning multiple championships and becoming a household name. But even as he reached the pinnacle of wrestling, Dwayne could see the limitations.
Wrestling was physically destructive and careers had expiration dates.
He watched older wrestlers whose bodies were broken, who had nothing to fall back on when the crowd stopped cheering.
He wanted more. He wanted longevity. He wanted to build something that could outlast his physical prime.
So he made another gamble.
Hollywood. The transition wasn't smooth.
His first major role was as the Scorpion King in The Mummy Returns in 2001, which led to a spin-off film, The Scorpion King, in 2002. The movie was financially successful, but critics weren't kind, and the film industry wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for a wrestler trying to become an actor. There was skepticism, condescension even. Hollywood had seen wrestlers try to act before, and the results were usually forgettable. Dwayne faced typecasting, limited roles, and the constant shadow of being just a wrestler playing pretend. For several years he took whatever roles came his way. Family comedies like The Game Plan, action films like Walking Tall, kids' movies like Race to Witch Mountain.
Some worked, many didn't. His film choices seemed scattershot, lacking direction.
Critics questioned whether he had the range to be taken seriously. But Dwayne was playing a long game. He was learning the craft, understanding how Hollywood worked, building relationships, and most importantly, he was patient. He knew that credibility wasn't given. It was earned through consistency and smart choices. The breakthrough came when he embraced what made him unique rather than trying to be something he wasn't.
Fast 5 in 2011 was the turning point.
His role as Luke Hobbs, a federal agent with muscles on his muscles and an unshakable intensity, reinvigorated the entire Fast and Furious franchise.
The chemistry, the action, the humor, it all clicked.
Suddenly, Dwayne Johnson wasn't just an action star, he was a bankable movie star who could open films worldwide. The Rock had become a brand, a guarantee of entertainment, and studios took notice. From there, the ascent was meteoric.
San Andreas, Central Intelligence, Rampage, Skyscraper.
He became one of the hardest working actors in Hollywood, sometimes releasing 3 or 4 films a year.
But the crown jewels were the Jumanji reboots. Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle in 2017 and its sequel.
Jumanji: The Next Level, 2019 showcased something critics hadn't fully appreciated, Dwayne's comedic timing and genuine warmth. He wasn't just playing tough guys anymore, he was creating characters people genuinely cared about. Television also became part of his empire. Ballers, an HBO series where he played a retired NFL player turned financial manager, ran for 5 seasons and demonstrated his ability to carry a show. But perhaps his most personal project was Young Rock, a sitcom that premiered in 2021, based on his own life. The show depicted different periods of his childhood and early career, offering audiences a glimpse into the struggles, the poverty, and the resilience that forged him. It was both a nostalgia trip and a testament, proof that the sanitized success stories were never the full picture. The Rock's filmography became a masterclass in understanding audience appetite and global market appeal. He didn't just choose roles. He architected a career that maximized both artistic satisfaction and commercial dominance. The Fast and Furious franchise became his most lucrative vehicle, with his character Hobbs becoming so popular that it spawned its own spin-off.
Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
In 2019 paired him with Jason Statham, and their antagonistic chemistry generated over $700 million worldwide. The film proved that Dwayne's drawing power could sustain an entire franchise offshoot without the original cast, but it was his ability to dominate multiple genres simultaneously that set him apart. While delivering bone-crunching action in the Fast saga, he was also voicing Maui in Disney's Moana in 2016, a role that revealed yet another dimension of his talent. His performance of You're Welcome became a cultural phenomenon, with children worldwide singing along to a song performed by a man who had once body-slammed opponents through tables. The film grossed over $600 million and introduced Dwayne to an entirely new generation of fans, families who might never watch an action film but now recognized him as a Disney hero.
Black Adam represented something deeply personal for Dwayne.
He spent nearly 15 years trying to bring the DC anti-hero to the screen, fighting for creative control, pushing for a character that broke the traditional superhero mold. When it finally released in 2022, it was the culmination of relentless advocacy and belief in a darker, more complex character. While the film received mixed critical reception, it demonstrated Dwayne's commitment to expanding his range and taking on roles that challenged the affable giant persona audiences had come to expect.
He wanted to play someone morally ambiguous, someone who operated in shades of gray rather than the clear-cut heroism of his other roles. His production company, $7 Productions, named after the $7 in his pocket when he was cut from the CFL, became a powerhouse in its own right. The company didn't just produce vehicles for Dwayne, it developed projects across multiple platforms, creating opportunities for diverse voices and stories. Fighting with My Family, the 2019 film about WWE wrestler Paige, was produced by $7 and showcased the company's ability to tell authentic, grounded stories outside of Dwayne's immediate star power. Read notice in 2021. A Netflix film pairing him with Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot became one of the streaming platform's most watched films ever, proving that Dwayne's appeal translated seamlessly to the evolving entertainment landscape. The sheer volume of his output was staggering. Between 2015 and 2023, Dwayne appeared in over 20 major films, not counting voice work, cameos, or television projects. He became Forbes' highest-paid actor multiple times, earning upwards of $80 to $90 million annually at his peak. But the money wasn't just about wealth, it was about security, about never returning to that apartment with $7, about building something that could support not just him, but generations of his family. Jungle Cruise in 2021, co-starring Emily Blunt, was another example of his strategic career choices. The film was based on a Disney theme park attraction, following the template that had worked for Pirates of the Caribbean. Dwayne played a charismatic riverboat captain, blending action, comedy, and family-friendly adventure. The film performed well despite pandemic challenges and further cemented his status as a Disney-friendly action star who could deliver box office results even in uncertain times. Yet, for all the blockbusters and franchise entries, some of his most interesting work came in smaller, more character-driven roles. Pain and Gain, in 2013, directed by Michael Bay, cast him as a born-again Christian bodybuilder involved in kidnapping and extortion. It was dark, satirical, and completely different from his usual heroic personas. Similarly, his role in Southland Tales from 2006, though the film was a critical and commercial failure, showed his willingness to take risks with unconventional material directed by Richard Kelly of Donnie Darko fame. His involvement in Moana 2, announced for a 2024 release, and a live-action remake of Moana further demonstrated his understanding of intellectual property longevity. These weren't just roles, they were investments in characters that would exist long after he stopped performing them. Maui would be voiced by someone else eventually, performed by other actors in stage adaptations, become a permanent fixture in Disney parks, but Dwayne's version would always be the original, the definitive interpretation. Television projects continued to diversify his portfolio. Beyond Ballers and Young Rock, he appeared in documentary series, competition shows, and even hosted Saturday Night Live multiple times. Each appearance showcasing his game-for-anything attitude and self-deprecating humor. He understood that maintaining relevance required constant presence, constant engagement, and an unwavering work ethic that made even his critics acknowledge his dedication. The characters he chose often reflected aspects of his own personality. Protectors, providers, men who used their physical strength in service of others. Whether playing a primatologist saving his gorilla friend in Rampage, a father rescuing his family in San Andreas, or a security expert navigating a burning skyscraper in Skyscraper, the through line was consistent. Strength deployed not for domination, but for salvation. It was a heroism that felt authentic because it mirrored his own life philosophy, shaped by those early years of watching his mother struggle, of knowing what it meant to fight for survival. The physical transformation and maintenance of Dwayne Johnson's body became as legendary as his career itself. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches and weighing anywhere between 260 to 280 pounds of muscle, depending on the role, his physique wasn't just genetics. It was the result of obsessive dedication, punishing routines, and a relationship with physical conditioning that bordered on addiction. But this commitment came with a price, one written in surgical scars. Chronic pain, and injuries that accumulated like interest on a debt that could never be fully repaid. Wrestling had destroyed parts of his body before Hollywood ever got its hands on him. Professional wrestling, despite being choreographed, inflicts real damage. The bumps, the slams, the repeated impact of a 270-pound body hitting canvas-covered plywood thousands of times, it all adds up. By the time Dwayne transitioned to acting, he was already carrying injuries that would require management for the rest of his life. His knees, shoulders, and back had absorbed years of punishment. He underwent multiple surgeries even during his wrestling career, including procedures to repair torn muscles and damaged joints that were inevitable consequences of the business. In 2013, Dwayne suffered a significant injury during the filming of Hercules. He tore his abdominal muscles completely off his pelvis during an intense action sequence. Most people would have stopped production, undergone immediate surgery, and taken months to recover. Dwayne did none of those things. Instead, he continued filming through the injury, managing the pain, adjusting his movements, and only addressing it surgically after production wrapped. The incident revealed something about his psychology. An inability or unwillingness to show weakness, to admit limitation, even when his body was literally tearing apart. The shoulder injuries were perhaps the most chronic issue. He underwent a surgery on his shoulder in 2017, posting graphic videos from the operating room that showed the extent of the damage. Torn tendons, frayed ligaments, the kind of deterioration that comes from decades of stress. Yet within months, he was back in the gym, back to lifting enormous weights, back to the routine without end that defined his lifestyle. The surgery wasn't a wake-up call to slow down, it was merely maintenance, a pit stop before returning to the race. His daily routine became the stuff of internet legend, waking up at 4 a.m, sometimes earlier, to begin workouts that would exhaust professional athletes. 6 days a week, sometimes 7, he trained with an intensity that seemed superhuman. The workouts weren't just about maintaining his physique for films. They were psychological necessities. Exercise was how he processed stress, how he maintained mental health, how he proved to himself daily that he was still in control. The gym was therapy, meditation, and battleground all at once. But this level of physical commitment required pharmaceutical support that Dwayne has been surprisingly open about, at least partially. He's admitted to using steroids during his younger years, a common practice in both professional wrestling and bodybuilding. While he stated he no longer uses them, the speculation never fully disappeared, particularly given the size and conditioning he maintained well into his 40s and now into his 50s. The scrutiny intensified with every shirtless scene, every Instagram post showing impossible muscle definition. Dwayne largely ignored the chatter, neither confirming nor denying the persistent questions about testosterone replacement therapy or other performance enhancement protocols common among aging action stars. The diet required to fuel and maintain his body was equally extreme. He famously consumed between 5 to 7 meals per day, meticulously calculated for protein, carbohydrates, and nutrients. His cheat day meals became social media events. Mountains of pancakes, multiple pizzas, entire trays of sushi consumed in single sittings. These weren't just indulgences, they were calculated refeeds, strategic breaks in an otherwise monastically disciplined nutritional regimen. His personal chef traveled with him, ensuring every meal met exact specifications regardless of location or filming schedule. Mental health became another aspect of his wellness journey that Dwayne addressed more openly as he aged. He's spoken candidly about battling depression, particularly after his football dreams collapsed and during periods of career uncertainty. The depression wasn't situational sadness. It was clinical, chemical, the kind that makes getting out of bed feel like lifting mountains. He's credited exercise, therapy, and his family with helping him navigate those dark periods. His willingness to discuss mental health struggles as a hypermasculine action star helped destigmatize these conversations, particularly among men who might otherwise suffer in silence. Injuries continued to accumulate even in his film career. A torn calf muscle in 2019 sustained during filming was documented in painful detail on his social media. The muscle had detached from his Achilles tendon, bunching up in a grotesque ball visible under the skin. Again, he documented the injury. The recovery, the physical therapy, turning personal suffering into motivational content for his millions of followers. There was always a performative aspect to his pain, not in the sense that it wasn't real, but in how he chose to broadcast it, to transform vulnerability into inspiration. His relationship with his body was complex, almost paradoxical. He pushed it beyond reasonable limits while simultaneously being deeply attuned to its signals. He knew when to push through pain and when to acknowledge injury. He understood the difference between productive suffering and destructive damage. This wisdom came from experience, from mistakes, from that moment early in his career when he nearly paralyzed himself attempting a wrestling move without proper preparation. Sleep became another battleground. Despite waking at ungodly hours, Dwayne averaged only 4 to 6 hours of sleep per night during peak production periods. Sleep scientists would call this chronically insufficient, a recipe for long-term health consequences. But Dwayne seemed to operate on a different biological clock, or perhaps more accurately, he'd trained his body to function on less, to extract maximum efficiency from minimal rest. Whether this was sustainable long-term remained an open question, one his body would eventually answer. 0947 The losses that marked Dwayne Johnson's life carved wounds that no amount of muscle or success could protect against. Death and grief visited him repeatedly, each time stripping away another piece of the invincibility his public persona projected. These weren't abstract sorrows. They were intimate devastations that forced him to confront the limits of his control and the fragility of the people he loved most. His father, Rocky Johnson, died on January 15, 2020, at the age of 75. The death was sudden, unexpected in the way that catches you completely unprepared, even when you know intellectually that parents are mortal. Rocky had been a complicated figure in Dwayne's life, simultaneously his toughest coach, his harshest critic, and the man who gave him the keys to the kingdom of professional wrestling. Their relationship carried the weight of unspoken expectations of a father who had broken barriers and a son who was expected to honor that legacy by surpassing it. Dwayne's tribute to his father was raw and public. He posted emotional videos, his voice cracking, tears streaming down a face that millions associated with strength and confidence. He spoke about their final conversation, about things left unsaid, about the complicated love between fathers and sons who communicate more through actions than words. Rocky's death wasn't just the loss of a parent. It was the severing of a direct link to wrestling history, to the foundation upon which Dwayne had built everything. The funeral was small, private, a stark contrast to the massive public life both men had lived. But Rocky's death wasn't the first devastating loss in the family. In August 2020, just months after losing his father, Dwayne's cousin and fellow WWE superstar Nia Jax lost her father as well. The Inoue family, the legendary Samoan wrestling dynasty that Dwayne was connected to through his mother's lineage, had experienced multiple losses over the years. The wrestling business took its toll not just physically but in shortened lifespans. In bodies worn down by decades of punishment, in hearts that gave out too soon. The wrestling world's mortality rate haunted Dwayne. He'd watched too many colleagues, friends, and fellow performers die young, from drug overdoses, heart attacks, suicide, and the cumulative damage of a profession that chewed people up and spit them out broken. Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Owen Hart, names of men who'd shared rings and locker rooms with him, now gone. Each death was a reminder of the path he'd narrowly escaped by transitioning to Hollywood when he did. The survivor's guilt was palpable in interviews where he discussed the wrestling industry's dark side. His mother, Ada, remained a constant source of both joy and worry. That moment on the Nashville highway when she tried to walk into traffic never fully left him. Even decades later, with all his success and ability to provide for her, Dwayne remained vigilant about her mental health and well-being. He moved her into his home at various points, ensured she had everything she needed, but money couldn't erase the memory of almost losing her when he was 14. That trauma shaped his protective instincts, his need to be the provider and protector for everyone in his orbit. The dissolution of his first marriage to Dani Garcia in 2007 was another kind of loss, though one handled with unusual grace. They'd been married for 10 years, together since college, and she'd been instrumental in building his career. The divorce could have been acrimonious, could have destroyed the business empire they'd built together. Instead, they maintained their business partnership, with Dani continuing as his manager and co-founder of 7 Bucks Productions. But divorce is still a death, of a shared future, of dreams imagined together. Of the family unit they'd created with their daughter, Simone. Speaking of Simone, watching his eldest daughter enter professional wrestling brought its own complex emotions. Simone Johnson signed with WWE in 2020, becoming the first fourth-generation wrestler in company history. Dwayne's feelings were visibly mixed, pride in her courage and determination, but also terror at what the business had done to so many people he loved. He knew the injuries she'd face, the sacrifices required, the toll it would exact. He couldn't protect her from it because she'd inherited the same stubborn determination that had driven him. The 2023 Maui wildfires hit particularly close to home for Dwayne. His connection to Hawaii, where he'd spent parts of his childhood and where he maintained deep cultural and familial ties, made the devastation personal. The fires killed over 100 people and destroyed the historic town of La Gena. Dwayne and his partner, Lauren Hashian, donated millions to relief efforts, but money couldn't resurrect the dead or restore what had been incinerated. He visited survivors, met with families who'd lost everything, and each conversation was a reminder that wealth and fame provided no immunity from tragedy. Professional betrayals and losses marked his career as well. The public feuding with fellow Fast and Furious star Vin Diesel became tabloid fodder, but underneath the headlines was a genuine fracture in a professional relationship that had generated billions. The two men stopped speaking, stopped appearing together, and the franchise that had elevated both of them became a source of tension rather than celebration. It was a different kind of loss, of camaraderie, of shared victory, of what had once felt like brotherhood. His grandfather, Peter Mevia, had died when Dwayne was still young, but the weight of that legacy pressed down constantly. Peter had been a pioneer, opening doors for Polynesian wrestlers, building a legacy that Dwayne was expected to honor and expand. The pressure of ancestry, of carrying forward a bloodline of warriors and performers, was both motivating and suffocating. Every success had to justify the sacrifices of those who came before. Every failure felt like dishonoring the dead. There were smaller, quieter losses too. Friendships that faded under the pressure of fame. Relationships that couldn't survive his grueling schedule. Moments with his children he could never reclaim because he was on set somewhere halfway around the world. The cost of his empire wasn't just measured in surgical scars and sleep deprivation. It was measured in absence. In moments missed. In the subtle erosion of normalcy that comes with being one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. Beyond the screen and the ring, Dwayne Johnson built an empire that extended into virtually every corner of entertainment, business, and philanthropy. His romantic life, while largely kept private compared to other celebrities of his stature, revealed a man who valued loyalty and partnership above fleeting Hollywood relationships. After his divorce from Danny Garcia, he began dating Lauren Hashian, daughter of Boston drummer Sid Hashian, in 2007. Their relationship developed slowly, deliberately, away from the constant glare of paparazzi cameras that followed his every professional move. Lauren became not just his partner, but his anchor, the person who helped him navigate the insanity of being Dwayne Johnson while remembering who he was before the fame. They had 2 daughters together. Jasmine, born in 2015, and Tiana, born in 2018, before finally marrying in an intimate ceremony in Hawaii in August 2019. The wedding was small, private, everything a celebrity wedding typically isn't. No magazine exclusives, no elaborate productions, just family and close friends witnessing a commitment that had already been proven through over a decade of partnership. Lauren appeared occasionally in his social media posts. Always supportive but never seeking the spotlight herself, content to be his partner rather than becoming a celebrity in her own right. His relationship with all 3 of his daughters became central to his public identity. He posted videos of tea parties with Jasmine and Tiana, of himself in tutus and tiaras, of a man who had body-slammed giants for a living now having pretend conversations with dolls. The contrast was intentional and powerful. This is what modern masculinity could look like. Strength that included tenderness, power that protected rather than dominated. With Simone, his relationship evolved as she grew into adulthood and chose to follow him into wrestling. He became mentor and worried father simultaneously, unable to stop her, but determined to prepare her for everything the business would throw at her. The business ventures expanded far beyond film production. Terramana Tequila, launched in 2020, became one of the fastest-growing spirit brands in history. Within its first year, it sold over 300,000 cases, a number that would make established brands envious. Dwayne didn't just lend his name to the product. He was involved in development, tasting, branding, and marketing. He understood that his audience would detect inauthenticity instantly. So the tequila had to actually be good. Had to represent quality that justified the price point. The success proved that his brand could sell more than movie tickets. It could sell lifestyle, aspiration, the promise that you too could taste success. Project Rock, his partnership with Under Armour, transformed athletic wear into another revenue stream. The clothing line, shoes and accessories bore his logo and his philosophy. Outwork everyone, embrace the grind. Find strength in struggle. The products sold out repeatedly, with drops creating the kind of frenzy typically reserved for limited edition sneakers. Under Armour credited the partnership with revitalizing their brand during a period when they were losing market share to competitors. Dwayne brought credibility, brought his massive social media following, and most importantly, brought a work ethic that aligned perfectly with athletic performance branding. His social media presence became a masterclass in personal branding and audience engagement. With over 300 million followers across platforms by the early 2020s, Dwayne had built one of the largest audiences in the world. But unlike many celebrities who used social media sporadically or delegated it entirely to assistants, Dwayne was genuinely active. He posted daily, sometimes multiple times per day, workout videos at 4 in the morning. Motivational messages, behind-the-scenes glimpses of film sets, interactions with fans. The authenticity, or at least the perception of it, made his followers feel connected to him personally. He weaponized this connection for good through various philanthropic efforts. The Dwayne Johnson Rock Foundation, established in 2006, focused on children's health and education, particularly for at-risk youth. He made frequent visits to children's hospitals, spending hours with sick kids, taking photos, signing autographs, bringing moments of joy to families enduring unimaginable stress. These visits weren't accompanied by press releases or camera crews. Many only became public when parents posted about them later. The genuine nature of these interactions, the fact that he didn't publicize them himself, added to the perception that this was who he really was when cameras weren't watching. His support for military veterans and active service members was consistent and personal. He partnered with organizations supporting wounded warriors, participated in USO tours, and frequently acknowledged military personnel in his posts and speeches. This wasn't just patriotic posturing. Dwayne genuinely respected the sacrifice and understood the parallels between military service and the discipline required in his own life. He provided financial support to veteran organizations, helped fund programs for PTSD treatment, and used his platform to advocate for better veteran care. The political speculation that surrounded Dwayne intensified throughout the late 2010s and early 2020s. Polls showed he would be competitive if he ran for president. And he didn't immediately dismiss the possibility the way most celebrities would. He spoke thoughtfully about leadership, about service, about his concerns for the country's direction. In 2021, he publicly stated he was seriously considering a presidential run, though he stopped short of declaring candidacy. The fact that his consideration was taken seriously by political analysts said everything about how his brand had transcended entertainment. He was viewed as a legitimate potential leader, not just a celebrity dabbling in politics, but he also faced controversies that threatened to tarnish the carefully cultivated image. The public feud with Vin Diesel escalated in 2021 when Diesel made a public appeal for Dwayne to return to the Fast franchise, framing it as family obligation. Dwayne's response was swift and cutting. He essentially told Diesel to stop manipulating the situation publicly, calling the post an example of manipulation. The exchange revealed that beneath the motivational posts and inspirational messages, Dwayne could be ruthless when his boundaries were crossed or when he felt disrespected. Accusations of lateness on set became another recurring issue. Reports emerged from multiple productions that Dwayne would arrive hours late, disrupting shooting schedules and costing productions significant money. His team disputed some claims and acknowledged others, framing them as necessary accommodations for his intensive morning workout routine. The controversy highlighted the tension between his personal brand, built on discipline and hard work, and the reality that his schedule and demands sometimes created challenges for everyone else involved in productions. The Red One controversy in 2024 brought these issues to a head, when reports suggested his chronic lateness had added nearly $50 million to the film's budget. While Amazon Studios defended him and the film still moved forward, the incident sparked conversations about whether his star power justified the complications he brought to productions. Some saw it as diva behavior. Others argued that someone of his commercial value earned certain privileges. The truth, as always, was probably somewhere in between. His involvement in various business ventures wasn't without failure either. The XFL, a football league he purchased with Danny Garcia in 2020 for $15 million, struggled despite his involvement. The league launched, suspended operations, relaunched, and continued to face challenges competing with the NFL's dominance. It was a reminder that even Dwayne's Midas touch had limits. That some markets were simply too difficult to crack regardless of celebrity involvement or financial investment. Yet, through controversies and setbacks, his philanthropic work continued expanding. His response to the Maui fires went beyond financial donations. He personally delivered supplies, spent days meeting with displaced families, and committed to long-term support for rebuilding efforts. When criticism emerged about the appropriateness of billionaires asking regular people to donate to relief funds, Dwayne listened to the feedback and adjusted his approach, demonstrating a willingness to learn and adapt that many celebrities lacked. His production company continued developing diverse projects that went beyond vehicles for his own stardom. 7 Bucks Productions backed documentaries about social justice, films featuring underrepresented communities, and projects that took financial risks in service of important stories. Young Rock employed numerous actors and crew members from Pacific Islander communities, creating opportunities that Hollywood traditionally denied to people who looked like Dwayne's family. The relationship with WWE remained complex and multifaceted. He would return for occasional appearances, each one generating massive publicity and renewed interest in the product. His 2023 appearance at WrestleMania alongside his cousin Roman Reigns created one of the most watched moments in recent WWE history. But he was careful about these appearances, strategic about when and how he associated himself with wrestling. He'd transcended the business but never fully left it, existing in a unique space where he could leverage wrestling nostalgia without being limited by it. His mentorship extended beyond his own daughters. He quietly supported and advised numerous young actors, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds trying to break into Hollywood. He understood the challenges they faced because he'd faced them himself. The typecasting, the limited opportunities, the assumption that certain people could only play certain roles. He used his influence to create opportunities, to open doors, to make the path slightly easier for those following behind him. This mentorship wasn't publicized extensively. It was simply what he believed successful people should do, pull others up rather than kick the ladder away. As of 2025, Dwayne Johnson exists in a rarefied space occupied by very few entertainers in history. He is simultaneously one of the most bankable movie stars on the planet. A successful entrepreneur with multiple businesses generating hundreds of millions in revenue. And a cultural icon whose influence extends far beyond entertainment. At 52 years old, an age when most action stars begin contemplating retirement or transitioning to character roles, Dwayne shows no signs of slowing down. If anything, his ambitions have only expanded, his work ethic remains as punishing as ever, and his cultural relevance continues to grow rather than diminish. His current film slate demonstrates the breadth of his appeal and his strategic approach to career longevity. The live-action Moana film, scheduled for release in 2026, represents a significant gamble, translating an animated classic into live action with himself reprising the role of Maui in physical form. The production is massive, the expectations enormous, and the potential for both triumph and failure equally substantial. His role in the DC universe remains in flux following the mixed reception of Black Adam, but Dwayne has navigated setbacks before, focusing on what's next rather than dwelling on what didn't work. His business empire continues expanding in unexpected directions. Terramana Tequila now competes with industry giants, having sold millions of cases worldwide. The Project Rock line with Under Armour continues releasing products that sell out within hours. He's invested in the XFL, maintaining his commitment despite ongoing challenges, viewing it as a long-term investment rather than expecting immediate returns. The presidential speculation refuses to die, despite Dwayne repeatedly stating he has no current plans to run for office. Polls still show he would be competitive. And political analysts continue discussing him as a potential future candidate. Whether this represents genuine political ambition or simply savvy brand management remains unclear, perhaps even to Dwayne himself. His family life has become increasingly central to his public identity. Simone is now actively pursuing her wrestling career in WWE. Jasmine and Tiana remain young. Still in the phase where their father is simply dad rather than a global icon, and he fiercely protects that innocence while he can. The daily routine hasn't changed despite the evolution of everything else. Still waking before dawn, still training with an intensity that would hospitalize normal humans, still maintaining the dietary discipline that keeps him in blockbuster-ready condition year-round. His body shows the accumulated damage now, the scars are more visible, the recovery takes longer, but he continues pushing, continues refusing to accept limitation. Looking forward, Dwayne shows no signs of retirement or even significant slowdown. He talks about working into his 60s, about projects a decade away, about building things that will outlast him, the drive that pulled him out of poverty, that transformed him from rejected football player to wrestling icon to movie star to business mogul. That drive hasn't diminished with success. 52, Dwayne Johnson remains one of the hardest working people in entertainment, one of the most influential figures in pop culture, and one of the most recognizable faces on earth. The boy who moved 13 times before graduating high school, who pulled his mother back from the edge of a highway, who sat in a small apartment with $7 wondering how he'd survive, that boy built an empire. And that empire continues growing,
driven by the same hunger that began when he had nothing left to lose.